Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership at TEPSA. And each episode, I look to bring you someone who has encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another, and bring them on to share some of their story in hopes that it inspires you to tell some of yours. I am so excited about this week's guest, my friend and pastor, Troy Sikes. Troy, tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Oh man, hey Todd, hey everybody. Well, in comparison to your introduction, mine's going to seem pretty lame. So yeah, I'm Troy Sikes. I've known Todd since he was in the 8th grade. So that's quite a few years.
A long time.
20 plus years. And so I was his youth pastor for a few years, and then I'm the associate pastor at First Baptist Church in Brenham. Been in ministry for about 35 years. Married to my wife Kelly for going on 35 years, and I've got two daughters, Jamie, who's my oldest, and Jill, who's my youngest. And so that's a little bit about me. I like to run. I like to teach. I like to be outside. Love sports. That's me.
Well, Troy, I am so excited you came on to have this conversation with me today. Like you said, we've known each other for a long time, and it's so funny because when you actually say the number of years, I'm like, golly, has it been that long? But I want to kind of backtrack even further from before we knew each other. You work in ministry now. You're an associate pastor. You've been a youth pastor. You've done all these things. When you were growing up, did you ever have ministry in your mindset of that's what I want to do with my life?
No. In fact, my parents were divorced when I was an infant. Mm-hmm. So I was raised by a single mom, and pretty much you had to work, kind of like your story in some ways, Todd, and a strong grandmother who moved in with us. And so growing up, man, I just enjoyed life and sports and playing. And then when I got into high school, my mom had remarried, and my stepdad he was a CPA. And so I took some business classes in high school, and I thought, I enjoy numbers. I enjoy math. I'll pursue an accounting degree. And then my senior year, I met who's my wife, and she invited me to church. And that was the first time I'd been to church in probably 10 years. Uh-huh. And so started a relationship there with her and with people in the church, and really fell in love with students. Yeah. And so I went on to college with the idea I would get my accounting degree. And then about my sophomore
I think I lost you. Wait, there you are. I lost you for a second there. Go back. You said your sophomore year?
Yeah, my sophomore year of college, I really started working in the church and working with students, teaching 6th grade boys Sunday school class, and just loved it, man. And so at that point, I felt like God was leading me into ministry to kids and to teachers. To teach. And I'd already 2 years into my accounting degree, so decided at that point to go ahead and finish out my business degree, and then move into seminary and religious training, but really felt the passion to teach and lead students.
I love that. And you came over to Brenham and you served for several years as our youth minister as well. And there's so many memories that I know me and my cousin Amanda have of you being our youth minister and things like that.
But we can't tell all of those, right?
I'm not going to share all of them here. I'll wait for that to be like a bonus episode or something.
Okay, good.
But at some point, you made that decision that, I love serving kids, but I feel called to do even more and serve in a larger role within the church. And so when did you feel kind of like that was the next step for you there?
Yeah, in 2001, our pastor at the time, student ministry was so great. Great things were happening in our student ministry. And I was loving it. But I knew that God had given me some teaching gifts. And when the pastor asked me to start doing some preaching and teaching on a bigger scale to the whole church, he recognized that people were enjoying that and people were being ministered to. And so he came and asked me in 2001 if I would make the jump into associate pastor to help him lead the church. At that time, the church was probably 700 or so people in 3 different services. Right. And so that was a hard transition because, man, I loved you and your cousins and students. And we had probably 130 or so kids. And it was really a hard struggle of what God was leading me to do. But I sensed that where I was in my life and where the church was, that I could have a great impact on families, moms and dads as well. And so in basically right at the summer of 2001, I think it was, kind of surrendered to say, let me take that step into associate pastor work. And I've been doing that since then.
Well, I think of it kind of like as a teacher choosing when to step out and move into an administrative type role. It's like you're changing who you're working with now, and it's a little bit bigger than it was before. And I know you said that it was a difficult choice, obviously, because you loved what you were doing. Did you find yourself kind of battling that for a little bit, like, God, I don't want this. This is not my thing, or were you kind of like at a point where it was like, you know what, this makes me uncomfortable, but I'm on board? Like, how quickly did you get to that place?
Listen, I still battle with that. Because when you're a principal of a school, there's a whole new ball game. You're leading leaders, you're coaching other leaders, but you still have a passion to teach kids and lead kids. And so I still love student ministry. And I still love interacting and spending time with students, just like you do. I guarantee you. Yeah. So it's a constant battle. I know God's given me a different platform to do that. And so I pursue that platform, but I also don't lose step with my roots, with kids and moms and dads. And hopefully even at 55 now, I can still, in a sense, still relate to students, because it all comes down to, Todd, you know this, do kids know that you love them?
Right.
And it doesn't matter how old you are. If you plug into a kid's life and they sense that you really care about them, that you really love them, it doesn't matter if you're, 25 or 65. Yeah. They're going to respond to it.
I completely agree with that. And, the other thing I think about is, when this wasn't a position you saw yourself in, being in ministry growing up. And so moving into that now and having all these years in ministry, what do you think is the biggest thing you've learned about yourself through serving in this role?
Stay true to who you are. Don't try to change who you are to suit anybody. Yeah. God gives you gifts, and true to those. In whatever context you find you, stay true. You're in it for the long haul, that there are going to be a lot of ups and downs, but you stay focused on what you love, do what you love. When the negative things come your way, you've got to stay focused on what you love. You can't focus on what you can't change, and those people who maybe don't see your vision or don't see your heart. So those are just some of the basics.
And I think that's really great advice, no matter what your job is or what role you hold, is just that idea of staying true to yourself no matter what. Well, Troy, in your job now, I mean, you like I said, you were my youth minister, now you're my associate pastor. And, when you serve in those kind of capacities for that amount of time, you get unique experiences. Like, I know with our relationship, you got to be my youth minister. Then you got to be my pastor. Then you got to marry my wife and I. Then you went and you did my mother's service when she passed. And so you've got to have all these unique experiences. And I'm just speaking from my own, much less the countless others that you've got to play a role in their life. When I think of myself as an educator, we hope they come back and say these great things. But as a pastor who's been there for so long, you've got to go through those life moments. when you sit and reflect on that, does that ever like truly sink in the kind of impact you get to have, or how do you reconcile it all?
Well, it come back to the joy and the blessing, longevity. You're right. I've got to watch people like yourself and others who, I saw them in junior high and watch them mature and go through struggles and go through ups and downs and joys, and then find their partner, their mate, and see them on a whole different level, watch them mature and grow, and think, I had a small part of watching that happen. And it's such a blessing. And then you're there for their joys, and then you're there for their heartaches. You experience the whole gambit of human life. And you don't get that for now. The more I look back and I think of all those holy moments and those times when I got to hug a kid and then sit with them at their wedding and watch them cry, and then sit with them at their mom's funeral and comfort them. And I just consider it a blessing. I would have never thought that I would be able to experience those things. And that's some of the joys of being a pastor. Yeah, you can sit up there and preach, but most people aren't going to remember your sermon. They're not. They're going to remember, did you really care? Did you walk with me in life? And it's all about people.
Yeah.
It is all about people. And if you forget that, you're going to miss the blessing. As an educator, where you are now, you can get so misguided in so much stuff. Yeah. But if you fail to remember that I'm connecting with one person at a time, and I get to make a difference, or I get to love them and care for them, then you reap that benefit of the depth of life, really.
Well, and in thinking about, your role is, like you said, it's so much more than just standing up on a Sunday and preaching, or on a Wednesday. You do a lot of counseling, you do a lot of therapy type things. How do you not carry all of that home?
You do. you do carry it. You can't, if you love people, you can't just, take that out of your heart and put that in the parking lot and close the door and go home.
Right.
It's what makes you who you are. So you take that emotional, you take joy or whatever, and you continue to pray through it. You continue to thank God for those moments that I can be there. Is it draining? Yes. But you have people also around you who are sustaining. Your wife, your partner is a sustainer in your life, and you lean on them. They give you energy. Friends, coworkers, they energize you. Obviously, the Lord energizes you. And you can't just set that aside if you really love people. You shouldn't. Yeah. You should feel that, and you should walk with it, and ask people to help you, bear that with you. So.
And I think it's important what you said is it's not a job for you to carry on your own. And it's not like you're saying we run around and tell everybody else's business. That's not what it is. But it's that, we can help by listening, but that doesn't mean you have to carry it all. Like you have to have those people in your life that you can talk to and work it out through, because otherwise it'll eat you up. Just like, again, I'd turn it back to educators, just like so many teachers, when you find out that kid doesn't have food at home, or that you have to call CPS or things like that, like those are things you lose sleep over. And I feel like a lot of it's the same for the work that you do. Well, Troy, I know another thing that is really important to you is your health and your fitness. You are a psycho runner. Like, you're one of those crazy people who's running way too many miles. And I'm one of those people who I'm only running if I'm being chased. Like, I'm not or if there's like 3 tacos left and I got to be first in line, like that's where I'll run. But, when did fitness become something that became really important to you?
Probably my freshman year of college. After high school, I played athletics in high school. And so once I got out of high school, I needed something to do, physically. My sister-in-law lived in the same apartments that my wife and I did, and she started to run in the evening. I said, "Hey, Troy, my sister's starting to run. I'm kind of afraid for her to run by herself, so why don't you run with her?" And so that's what happened. That's what got me into running back in 1986, I think it was. So I started, no, actually 1983. I started running with her. And then we just kind of progressed and more miles. And then she stopped running and I just kept going.
I
And so
mean,
I've been running.
that's so funny how you've been running since longer than I've been alive. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Troy, I know, that running is, I'm sure it's such a release for you. It's a way to deal
It's
with.
a part of my therapy.
Yeah. And so, but you took it upon yourself recently to do this 24 hours of hope running where you had a goal. And yeah, you wore the shirt and I was like, hey, does he know I'm going to
Hey,
ask
look
about
at there.
this? But you set this crazy goal to raise money for a local charity here in our city called Adam's Angels, and you set a goal to run. We have a park called Holt Park where one lap is a mile, right? One lap is a mile.
Yeah.
And so you had a goal that you wanted to run 100 miles in 24 hours. Where the heck did that even come from? Because it sounds crazy to even say it, much less sit there and go, this is what I want to do.
Well, in the running world, it is not unheard of for marathon 100 more. And so in my running career, so to speak, I progressed up through the distances. And after I ran so many marathons or whatever, I thought, I want to run further, just to see how far I can run. So in 2011, I ran the Boston Marathon, and then I proceeded to run ultra marathons, and I've run a couple of 50-mile runs. And I thought, all of this training, all of these miles has been basically for me to enjoy the distance. And I thought about 4 or 5 years ago, I thought, I need to use my running for somebody else to benefit. And so I came up with the idea one day of, what I really want to try to run 100 miles because I've run 50. But I don't want to do that just without any meaning. So I went to Donna Culver about 5 years ago and I said, what if I eventually did a fundraiser and ran 100 miles for your ministry at Adam's Angels? And she said, oh, Troy, it'll kill you. Don't do it.
We all thought you were going to die.
Yeah. So I put that on the back burner. And then this past fall, it kind of reached mine. I was feeling good. I'm going to do it. Let's just go. So October, I broke it to my wife. Hey, Kelly, what do you think if I ran 100 miles? And she said, you're crazy. Don't do it. But because you're doing it for a purpose, I'll support you. And obviously she did. So I let the news out on January 20th by Facebook that I was going to attempt it. And I spent 6 weeks raising money. And so on the 13th of February, no, that's about a month, basically less than a month, I went ahead and ran it on February 13th. And I had the community, people came together. It was such a humbling and community-wide event. It was awesome.
So how much money did you end up raising?
A little over $22,000.
Wow. And is there still an opportunity for people to donate if they still want to donate?
They can still donate. They can go on to Adam's Angels website, www.adamsangelsministry.org, and they can donate online. They can send a check, memo 24 Hours of Hope. The ministry goes to the families who are going through cancer by they help with bills. It all goes to those kids. So.
And that's what I've always loved myself about Adam's Angels is, I remember little Adam, and I remember when all of that happened, and, this leukemia came out of nowhere, and just within a couple days or a couple hours, he was gone. And to have this kind of organization exist for those families who have children in this immense pain, to help alleviate some of their stress with medical bills, is such an important charity and such an important thing to be a part of. And I think, you running, I remember when you put it online and Liz came to me and she goes, "Did you see what Troy is doing?" And I was like, "No." And so she showed me and I was like, "He's never going to survive." And I said, we went to church that next Sunday when you had said, "I'm thinking about it in the next week or so." And I was like, "Liz, we have to make sure that we're at this service because it may be the last time we see Troy." And so, but I loved when you did run that day. There were so many social media posts of people, what mile you were on, how you were doing, when you were taking breaks. Now, running that 100 miles, what mile did you reach that point of where you said, "I am crazy"?
Todd, because there were so many people who came out that just said, "Hey, I want to run a lap with you. I'll run 5 laps with you." I had company pretty much the whole time. I may have run 10 laps by myself.
Uh-huh.
90 laps. I don't think I ever reached a point like I want to quit or this is just terrible. But probably about mile 88 or so, I was like, I'm cold. It was 35 degrees. It was really cold. And I was like, when's the sun ever going to come up? And I had been running. I'd run most of the lap and then I'd walk the main hill. There's one hill at mile 88. I realized I'm running so slow that people can walk and stay up with me. So at mile 88, I just started walking.
Yeah.
And for about 10 miles, I walked. And then the last 3, they said, you need to pick it up, because if not, we're going to be close to being 24 hours and you'll be at mile 99 or whatever.
Yeah.
So the last 3 laps, I walked really fast. And then the last lap, I ran the whole thing. But it was such an uplifting thing because so many people were there to help me and encourage me. And every lap, I prayed for a different child.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't say that earlier. Each lap, I took a child, and they were either in remission or maybe cancer treatments. And I prayed for each child. So I had 100 names of kids. And it was very humbling to know that I'm praying for, this child on this lap. And I don't know that child.
Right.
But God knows them and somebody knows them and they have a story. And so it was just very cool. And so I was privileged to be able to do it. And it that overshadowed any pain or anything else.
So, I've got to ask though, the next day, could you walk?
Yes. In fact, I preached 2 days afterwards.
I know. And Liz and I couldn't
Yeah.
be there because we were out of town. And she said, "Do you know he's preaching this Sunday?" And I said, "What? He just ran 100 miles.
It took, I walked slowly, gingerly. But the main thing after running that much is getting your appetite back. Because you really, you're drinking electrolyte replacement. You're putting things. You're not eating a lot of solid meals. You're eating a lot of soft things, and so it takes a while for your appetite to really come back. So my body probably rebounded, a little faster in the next 24 to 48 hours. My appetite took a little bit longer to really come back fully.
Wow. Well, bravo to you. It's impressive on its own, but it's even more meaningful and impactful to know that the money that was raised that goes to this organization that's going to help so many families, and
Right.
the fact that you spent a different mile praying for a different kid, I think is another really cool element to all of this. That there's just so much good around things like that, and the more we can amplify those stories, the better our world is. Well, Troy, one question that I always love to end all of my Tell Your Stories on is, there's lots of different people from all walks of life who listen to these conversations. And if there was one thing that was really heavy on your heart that you wish most people knew or understood, what would your one thing be?
Oh my gosh, man. My one thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. That's kind of like, you ever seen City Slickers? You ever seen City
Yes.
Slickers? You know, and you're one thing. Um, you know, I think, I guess if I were to sum things up, it would be to love well,
Mm,
to love well. You know, in ministry, Jesus said that the greatest commandments are to love God and love people.
right.
And so in life, love well. You know, wherever your friends, your family, your coworkers, yourself, right? Love deeply, love with integrity, love with honesty, love with joy, because life is good. It really is. Life is good, and so no matter where you are in life, you might be going through pain or a trial, but man, there's so much good around. And in the middle of this COVID Corona crisis, man, there's so much good that's happening around our world, and so love people well. So
I love that.
that's my one thing.
That's the perfect way to close this off. I do have to say, though, I'm very disappointed you did not bring any props to this conversation, because you are the prop king when it comes to speaking. So I was just waiting for something to come out. But I mean, unless you count your shirt as a prop, but I'm just kind of like, God, Troy, no props at all.
I just, I just wasn't prepared. I didn't know what you were going to ask me.
There we
I
go.
was nervous about what you were going to ask me. And so if I'd have kind of had a clue, I'd have thought about maybe some unique way, but
I
hey,
love it. Well, Troy, I can't thank you enough for agreeing to come on this. You've been a huge instrumental part of my life and my family's life. And so when you agreed to come on and share some of your story, I was over the moon excited. So thank you.
thank you, Todd. And I will say to whoever's watching it, listen, Todd is just a great example of loving people and being passionate about what you do. And so you are one of my, and so many students I got to interact with. You are also one of my pride and joy. So you're my friend, brother, son in ministry in a sense. And so keep up the good work, man.
Well, thank you, Troy.
I
Well,
love
thank you, everybody, for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. I remember you can check out past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. It's there. I hope today's conversation with Troy has encouraged you to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters.